Hey everyone, this is Glenn Greenwald. Welcome to a new episode of System Update here on our home on Rumble. 2 weeks ago, the New York Times, which many people, not myself, but many people consider the paper of record, purported to confirm what has been obvious since at least the days before the 2020 election, namely that the laptop discovered by and reported on by the New York Post in the days leading up to the election was not, in fact, Russian disinformation, as many, if not most, liberal corporate media outlets claimed in conjunction with the CIA and big tech prior to the election, but instead was authentic. In fact, they did a variety of reporting in which they based their reporting on the emails in the archive, the key ones of which they stated they were able to fully authenticate. Now, just about 6 months ago, a reporter from Politico, Ben Schreckinger, published a book in which he provided ample proof of what the New York Times 2 weeks ago purported to confirm, namely that the key emails that triggered the controversy surrounding the Hunter Biden reporting that led to big tech censoring the New York Post, Facebook and Twitter both censoring that story on the grounds that, according to the CIA and ex-officials in the CIA and other security state agencies, it was Russian disinformation and therefore couldn't be trusted, was in fact true. And I, in September, did a video right here on Rumble examining the evidence presented by this Politico reporter, which was completely dispositive. He went and spoke with third parties who were on the email chains and was able to confirm and match the emails and other documents in their telephone and computer that they received in real time that word for word matched the emails and other documents that were in the Hunter Biden archive that the New York Post was using to report. He obtained documents from governments, including the Swedish government, that had been non-public that also match word for word the other key documents that were in the archive. And in his book, he basically essentially said that the emails in the Hunter Biden laptop were not Russian and they were not disinformation. They were fully real and fully authentic. Here from Politico, which is his employer, they published an article promoting the book by the reporter that was headlined "Double Trouble for Biden." And part of it read, quote, "Ben Schreckinger's The Bidens, Inside the First Family's 50-Year Rise to Power, out today, finds evidence that some of the reported Hunter Biden laptop material is genuine, including 2 emails at the center of last October's controversy." Now, this article downplays significantly the extent of those findings. I not only examined those findings in that September video I just showed you and in an article I wrote at Substack accompanying the video, but what I also went through very systematically is that long before the Politico article was published, let alone before the New York Times purported to confirm that the emails were authentic, all the way back in October of 2020, there was already overwhelming evidence right from the beginning that these materials were authentic. And I went through the evidence. Remember, when I was reporting on them or trying to report on them at the time, I was with The Intercept, the media outlet that I co-founded in 2013. I was barred, I was censored by the senior editors at The Intercept, the outlet that I co-created, from reporting on these materials based on the lie, the CIA lie, that the materials were Russian disinformation and therefore they couldn't be verified. It was my own outlet and many, many others that lied to the public and said it was Russian disinformation and then used that lie, The Intercept did, to block me from reporting. And that was when I quit in protest over being censored, because my contract at the time said that nobody can prevent me from publishing to the internet whatever I want to publish without any editorial interference. And that is what they did. They violated the contract because they were petrified, like most liberal outlets that also spread this lie, that this reporting would help Donald Trump win and Joe Biden lose, because it shed so much light, not on what Hunter Biden was doing, but on what Joe Biden was doing in Ukraine, the country essentially over which he ruled as vice president for President Obama, at the same time that his son Hunter was getting paid $50,000 a month by a Ukrainian energy company called Burisma, And Hunter was attempting to induce his father to do favors for Burisma, and there's certainly evidence that he did, including getting rid of a prosecutor that was hostile to Burisma. But beyond that, there was a lot of evidence about the pursuit of business deals in China in which Joe Biden was going to be a profit participant. Obviously, China was an important country for when Joe Biden was vice president, and Joe Biden would wield a lot of power if he ever were elected president again, as most people expected he would run and try and become. And at the time, Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's brother were trading on Joe Biden's name, not only to pursue deals for themselves in China, but also to generate profit for Joe Biden. And the media was so afraid of the story that they spread this CIA lie that this evidence was that these documents were Russian information, something for which there was never any evidence. It was made up out of whole cloth by intelligence officials interfering in the American election with an outright lie. Big tech seized on that lie that these materials were Russian disinformation in order to justify banning the story. It was an incredible disinformation campaign, probably one of the gravest in modern American history, perpetrated by a union of big tech, corporate media, and the intelligence community designed to manipulate the outcome of the election. And now, as I said, even though we have now, since the election is over, the major media outlets reporting the proof that these materials are authentic, all the way back then, I knew they were authentic. I'm somebody who has staked my career many times on authenticating large archives. I did that in the Snowden story that I reported in 2013. I did it again in 2019 with a 18-month-long investigative expose based on a gigantic archive provided to me by my source that contained hacked telephone chats of top-level Brazilian authorities that I had to authenticate before publishing. I've done it many times while working with WikiLeaks. I know how these archives are authenticated. You go to third parties, people who got the emails in real time, and you ask them to compare what they got to what's in the archive. And if word for word it's authentic as it was, you know it's real. There are other indicia of authenticity that were there from the beginning. These media outlets knew they were lying when they said it was Russian disinformation, but they didn't care. They were willing to lie. They were eager to lie because they viewed not telling the truth and fulfilling journalistic responsibilities as their highest duty, but defeating Donald Trump in 2020 as their highest duty, even if it meant lying, which is exactly what they did. So we have the evidence from the very beginning, from the start, that I was willing to stake my entire journalistic reputation on, and others were as well, because it was so obvious the archive was real. Then we have the Politico reporter publishing this book filled with information which media outlets just simply ignored. They pretended this didn't exist. It was a reporter from one of their own, a mainstream news outlet. Only Politico, his employer, even noted it in passing, downplaying it, but every other outlet that told this lie that these materials were Russian disinformation just ignored this book. Huffington Post, Politico, Mother Jones, The Intercept, one after the next that told this lie. CNN, MSNBC, they all just pretended this proof in this book didn't exist. Then 10 days ago, when the New York Times published their article, almost 2 weeks ago now, the headline of which was Hunter Biden paid tax bill, but broad federal investigation continues. And it's an article, as you see there, on how broad the Justice Department criminal investigation into Hunter Biden is. It doesn't just include suspicions that he hid his taxes, but all kinds of potential illegalities in his international business deals. The New York Times, to tell the story, had to rely on the emails in that archive, which only 13, 14 months ago, most liberal corporate outlets were saying were fake, were forged by the Russians. Here's what the New York Times said, why they used the emails in that archive. Quote, people familiar with the investigation said prosecutors that examined emails between Mr. Biden, Mr. Archer, and others about Burisma and other foreign business activities. Those emails were obtained by the New York Times from a cache of files that appears to have come from a laptop abandoned by Mr. Biden in a Delaware repair shop. So here they are, giving credence to the original story told by the New York Post about how they got the laptop, which is Hunter Biden brought it in to be repaired. By Hunter Biden's own accounting, it was at a time when he was struggling with drug addiction. He was asked in interviews, is it possible you just left your laptop there, as they claim? And he said, look, there was a long period of my life when I was dealing with addiction when I wasn't exactly careful with my belongings. Of course, that's something an addict would do. And the New York Times says these files appear to have come from the laptop abandoned in that Delaware repair shop. Exactly what the New York Post said from the start. But here's the key of what the New York Times acknowledged. Quote, the email and others in the cache were authenticated by people familiar with them and with the investigation. So the New York Times is now saying their paper of record, just like the Politico reporter said, just like all the evidence before the election said, that these emails were not Russian disinformation. They were authentic, and the New York Times has authenticated them. Now, you would think, I guess, that when the New York Times, venerated by them as the paper of record, themselves comes out and says, we have authenticated the key emails, you would think that those outlets that publish those lies, that this was Russian disinformation, repeating that over and over and over again to discredit the reporting, to justify the brute censorship by big tech to save Joe Biden, you would think they would feel an obligation to at least acknowledge the proof that the New York Times just offered that these materials were real and that therefore what they said about the archive was a lie. They didn't. Not one media outlet, and even in the wake of that New York Times report, even acknowledged the existence of this proof, let alone retracted their lies. That's how much contempt they have for you and the public and their jobs as journalists. Even when they got caught red-handed, lying, blatantly lying, spreading a CIA falsehood for which there was never any evidence. Even when they get caught red-handed doing that, they feel no compunction, even about acknowledging the proof, let alone retracting it and admitting they spread a falsehood. Because they see their job. They see their job as lying to protect the Democratic Party. That is really how they think. I worked within these newsrooms and with these newsrooms. That is how they think, and the proof is in the pudding. Now, if that New York Times story from 2 weeks ago wasn't enough to make them retract, today we have the other most significant paper in their world, the Washington Post, that went even further. They reported on Hunter Biden's, quote, multi-million-dollar deals with a Chinese energy company. When the New York Post first reported this story on October 14th, 2020, 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before the 2020 election, the first story they reported was about Joe Biden's business dealings in Ukraine on behalf of his son. The second story was about this, published the next day, October 15th. Hunter Biden's multi-million-dollar deals with the Chinese energy company and the relationship of Joe Biden to those deals. Finally, the Washington Post, on March 30th, 2020, with the election very safely over, finally reports on this and admits, quote, a Washington Post review confirms key details and offers new documentation of Biden family interactions with Chinese executives. So in order to report on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's activities in China, what the Washington Post did is the same thing the New York Times did. They used the emails on that laptop because they now are willing to admit they're authentic and not Russian disinformation. Quote, over the course of 14 months, the Chinese energy conglomerate and its executives paid $4.8 million to entities controlled by Hunter Biden and his uncle, according to government records, court documents, and newly disclosed bank statements, as well as emails contained on a copy of a laptop hard drive that purportedly once belonged to Hunter Biden. They're now using to do their reporting the same emails that Twitter and Facebook banned discussion of, that most of these corporate outlets lied and said were forged by the Russians. The Post goes on, quote, the Post review draws in part on an analysis of a copy said to be part of the hard drive of a laptop computer that Hunter Biden purportedly dropped off at a Delaware repair shop and never came to collect. Biden's aides and some former U.S. intelligence officials have voiced concern that the device may have been manipulated by Russia to interfere in the campaign. That's not what happened. I'll show you what happened in just a minute. These outlets and Joe Biden and Jen Psaki stated explicitly and emphatically, not that they had concern that the device may have been manipulated by Russia. They stated explicitly it was Russian disinformation, which was a complete and total lie. The Post goes on. On Capitol Hill, Democrats had dismissed earlier reports about Hunter Biden's work in China as lacking credibility or being part of a Russian disinformation campaign. Do you see how any facts that interfere with or undermine or subvert the Democratic Party's interest automatically now get labeled Russian Disinformation. Quote, the Post analysis included forensic work by 2 outside experts who assessed the authenticity of numerous emails related to the CEFC matter. In addition, the Post found that financial documents on the copy of Hunter Biden's purported laptop matched documents and information found in other records, including newly disclosed bank documents obtained by Senator Chuck Grassley, a senior Republican on the Finance and Judiciary Committees. They ran a separate article, did the Post. Here's how the Post analyzed Hunter Biden's laptop. Quote, 2 experts confirmed the veracity of thousands of emails. And then they say, but a thorough investigation was stymied by missing data. They couldn't confirm all of them, but they confirmed thousands. Quote, thousands of emails, purportedly from the laptop computer of Hunter Biden, President Biden's son, are authentic communications that can be verified through cryptographic signatures from Google and other technology companies, say 2 security experts who examined the data at the request of the Washington Post. Why didn't they do that before the election when it actually mattered? Now, there's something going on because you have the New York Times on 2 weeks ago on March 16th, and now the Washington Post today coming out and saying, we have confirmed the key emails, the controversial emails on Hunter Biden's laptop. They're not Russian disinformation. They are authentic. Let's remember what CNN did on October 17th, 2020. So just a couple weeks before the election, they invited on this man, James Clapper, who was President Obama's senior national security official. He was the director of national intelligence. Remember, James Clapper got caught red-handed lying to the U.S. Senate in 2013 when he went to testify and was asked by Senator Ron Wyden, does the NSA collect dossiers on millions of Americans? And James Clapper looked at him in his face and said, no, we don't, not wittingly. And that was when Edward Snowden, who had in his hands the proof that the U.S. was spying on American citizens en masse, knew Clapper was lying, and made the final decision to come forward with that evidence because he couldn't let James Clapper get away with that lie. After James Clapper lied to the Senate, and we all know he lied, he wasn't fired, he wasn't prosecuted. He was kept on as President Obama's top national security official, the liar, the one who got caught lying, kept on by President Obama, and then got hired by CNN, where he still works, to deliver the news. Remember when the CIA and the security state used to have to use clandestine methods to influence corporate news? Now they just right out in the open go to work in their newsrooms, on their payrolls. This is who CNN has telling the news. And listen to what he said, this congenital career-trained liar, now working for CNN right before the election about the materials on Hunter Biden's laptop. Just listen to what he said.
How much does the source matter here?
Well, source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet Russian tradecraft at work. The Russians have analyzed the target. They understand that the president and his enablers crave dirt on Vice President Biden, whether it's real or contrived, it doesn't matter to them. And so all of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow without, and emails on it without any metadata. It's all very curious. But so here you have a willing target, and the Russians, who are very sophisticated about how to exploit a willing target. And to me, that's what's at work here.
And so, when you try to figure out the specifics of, whether that meeting email, for example, is real in the midst of this, do you think stuff like that could just have been planted in there and be completely fake?
I do. I think the emails could be contrived, particularly since, as I understand it from what I've read, they appear without any metadata. That is, from, to, and any technical data. At least immediately evident. Now, if this computer is in the hands of the FBI, they have obviously excellent, sophisticated technical and forensic analytic capabilities, and I think they'll be able to sort it out, whether this is genuine or not. But, it's all pretty curious, given, again, 2.5 weeks out from the election.
Do you see what just cold-blooded liars they are? here you have a supposed journalist, at least that's her job title with this media corporation, working in tandem with a former security state official who's now her colleague in a newsroom somehow. And they're both concocting a lie, a false claim out of nowhere, telling Americans to believe that this incriminating evidence was forged by the Russians, was fabricated, and was fake. None of which was true. They're right, the corporate media is, the liberal wing of the corporate media, which is most of the corporate media, that there is a grave disinformation problem in the United States. The United States is indeed plagued by a very serious, extreme problem of disinformation. What they're wrong about is the source of that disinformation. It doesn't come from QAnon or Facebook or teenagers on 4chan. It comes from them. These are the liars. These are the disinformation agents. You just see it over and over. Did you hear what they just said? Just complete fabrications to help Joe Biden 2 weeks before the election. Now, here's CNN today with the Washington Post story coming out. They didn't mention that, but also the New York Times story from 2 weeks ago. They suddenly decide to take seriously the Hunter Biden investigation now that Joe Biden is safely elected. Listen to what you hear now on CNN.
Just lay out your reporting here, because this is very, very bad for the president's son.
It is, and it's an investigation, as you pointed out, going back to 2018. And right now, prosecutors in Delaware are focusing on a number of things, including whether Hunter Biden and some of his business associates violated laws, including tax and money laundering laws and foreign lobbying laws. A lot of this has to do with Hunter Biden's time working with this company called Burisma, an energy company in Ukraine. He was getting paid as much as $50,000 a month for that company during a time that Joe Biden, his father, was vice president, was in charge of handling Ukraine issues for the Obama administration. And that, of course, raised questions of a conflict. And so what we know is this investigation, for a while, it has been going on, and it seemed to not a lot was going on until recently. A lot of activity has picked up. We know witnesses have gone in to talk to the grand jury in Delaware. We know of witnesses who are going in to talk to investigators in the next few weeks. So we know that there's a lot of activity now picking up. He's not been charged. He says that Hunter Biden says that he committed no wrongdoing, and that he says at the end of this, he believes he'll be cleared. But obviously, as you pointed out, this is a political mess for the sitting president to have his son being investigated by the Justice Department, his own Justice Department.
Oh, wow. So I guess what they're saying is that Hunter Biden was engaged corruptly in Ukraine and being paid in order to exercise influence with his father, the former vice president and Democratic presidential frontrunner, to benefit companies that were paying Hunter Biden. It's amazing that just 14 months ago, the same network was telling you to disbelieve all of that it was all fake and forged, that it was fabricated by the Russians. It was Russian disinformation, Soviet tradecraft. And now, when it doesn't matter anymore, they're willing to say that it's true. Let me just show you, beyond CNN, how aggressively and deliberately and shamefully these media outlets just lied. And remember, not one of them, not CNN or any of the ones I'm about to show you, have even acknowledged all the proof that has emerged from Politico reporter, from the New York Times, from the Washington Post, that they lied. Here is Huffington Post. This is what they published on October 20th, 2020, a couple weeks before the election. They, I think, purported this to be some sort of reporting video when it was just so plainly a Biden campaign ad masquerading as reporting, filled with lies. Listen to what the Huffington Post told their readers. see the sinister music? The fact that there's only one side of the story presented? The fact that it's all designed to convince you to ignore the evidence that was reported by the New York Post and others because it's all Russian disinformation, as these honorable intelligence officials have said? Here's what Mother Jones said. Quote, Giuliani and the New York Post are pushing Russian disinformation. It's a big task for the media. With its new Biden story, Murdoch's tabloid is a useful idiot for Vladimir Putin. Do you see any caveats there that the Washington Post claimed? They were saying that, oh, well, we might have some concerns that perhaps some of the emails... No. Giuliani and the New York Post are pushing Russian disinformation. They're being useful idiots for Vladimir Putin. Here was the first reporter to break the story that the Biden archive was Russian disinformation. It was Natasha Bertrand, who at the time worked for Politico. Every time she lies, she gets promoted. She began at Business Insider. She was a heavy proponent of various Russiagate lies, including this fake, non-existent connection between Trump and Alpha Bank. For that, she got promoted to The Atlantic and MSNBC. Then she got promoted to Politico, where she told this lie: Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation. Dozens of former intel officials say. Now, the reality is that headline is a lie. The intelligence officials didn't say the story is Russian disinformation. They admitted in their letter that they had no evidence to believe that they just were using their experience and their intuition to say it seems like it has the hallmarks, like James Clapper said, of Russian tradecraft. In the hands of these lying reporters, it got turned into something more definitive. Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation. Here was the Huffington Post again. More than 50 former intel officials say Hunter Biden's smear smells like Russia. Here's the media outlet I, to my great embarrassment, co-founded in 2013, which not only censored my own reporting on the story by saying it didn't meet their lofty, rigorous editorial standards because the email was likely Russian disinformation and couldn't be verified. 5 days before I tried to publish my own story, this is the crap they published: the CIA stenography. It was by James Risen, a former New York Times reporter. The Intercept was created to oppose the New York Times, and yet the editorial leaders of the Intercept hire New York Times reporters to control the newsroom because they're desperate for approval and popularity with other liberal media outlets, and they get it by hiring New York Times reporters who they put in charge. And he wrote James Risen did an article, We're Not a Democracy. 4 years ago, the nation tumbled down the Trump rabbit hole. We've been lost in the dark so long, it's hard to know which way is up. The Intercept, this outlet that I co-founded at the height of the Snowden reporting, was founded to be adversarial to the claims of U.S. security state agencies such as the CIA. It was created based in the awareness that the U.S. corporate media was far too interconnected with and deferential to the CIA, the Pentagon, the FBI, the NSA, and just repeated their lies, as we just saw repeatedly them doing. We were supposed to be adversarial, more critical, applying critical scrutiny. Look at what Jim Risen and the Intercept editors did in their desperation to help Joe Biden win the election. They were talking about this laptop. Quote, their latest falsehood once again involves Biden, Ukraine, and a laptop mysteriously discovered in a computer repair shop and passed to the New York Times thanks to Trump crony Rudy Giuliani. The New York Post story was so rancid that at least one reporter refused to put his name on the byline. The U.S. intelligence community had previously warned the White House that Giuliani had been the target of a Russian intelligence operation to disseminate disinformation about Biden. And the FBI has been investigating whether the strange story about the Biden laptop is part of a Russian disinformation campaign. This week, a group of former intelligence officials, the people we were supposed to be adversarial to, but instead they're now subservient to, issued a letter saying that the Giuliani laptop story has the classic trademarks of Russian disinformation. All things we know to be a complete and utter lie, as a result of the proof that existed at the time and that has emerged since then. Do you think the Intercept or the Huffington Post or Mother Jones or CNN or any of these other outlets have acknowledged any of this or retracted their story? Go look at these articles and see if you can find an editor's note on any of them saying that subsequent to the publication of our story, evidence emerged that what we said here is a lie and that these materials were fully authenticated from the start and had nothing to do with Russia as we falsely told you. That's what media outlets with integrity would do. They don't care about integrity, and so they don't do that. A couple weeks ago, or actually last week, in the wake of the New York Times story, my Substack colleague, Matt Taibbi, published a story about the extraordinary mass-dropping moment that this is for the corporate media. Quote, the media campaign to protect Joe Biden passes the point of absurdity. And he details in there, using The Intercept as an example, how editors deliberately lied by claiming that this material was Russian disinformation when they had no reason to believe that other than the CIA told them to say it. Quote, Intercept editors Betsy Reed and Peter Moss in October 2020 refused to publish a Greenwald piece unless he addressed the, quote, complexity of the disinformation issue, which Reed condescendingly suggesting there was a lot of, quote, in-house knowledge the Pulitzer winner could, quote, tap into. By in-house knowledge, Reed, the head of The Intercept, meant Robert Mackey and Jim Risen, two former New York Times reporters who'd already denounced the laptop story as conspiracy theory. Intercept editors Reed and Moss not only effectively demanded that Greenwald run his copy by a pair of New York Times vets, odd for a site specifically launched as a counter to Times-style reporting, but chastised Greenwald for refusing to address the, quote, earmarks of Russian disinformation canard issued in a group letter of 50 of the exact same Bush and Obama-era intelligence officials who denounced the Snowden disclosures and had originally been the Intercept's primary reporting targets. This is what went on in every newsroom. I promise you. They knew this story was a lie. No one believed these documents were forged by Russia. Nobody. The CIA letter was designed to give them a way to tell this lie with a straight face, but the reason everybody knew it was a lie was because all the things we use as journalists to verify these documents were there from the beginning. You had Tony Bobolinsky and others on the email chain showing on their phone and computers, look, here's the emails I received in real time. And they match exactly what's on this archive. Of course the archive is authentic and genuine. They lied on purpose inside these newsrooms. They were desperate not to be perceived as helping Donald Trump. So now we have the proof from multiple sources, including the outlets they claim are the most credible, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico. How many news outlets have retracted this false story in the past year and a half, now that the proof is available? Zero. And you know what? They won't. They never will. And I'll tell you why. These outlets do not see themselves as journalistic in nature. They don't. These media corporations. They see themselves as activists for the Democratic Party. They have convinced themselves that Donald Trump is such a singularly threatening and unprecedentedly dangerous figure, essentially the return of Adolf Hitler, and that his supporters and movement behind him are basically the equivalent of neo-Nazis. That everything and anything is justified to stop them from remaining in power or winning another election, including joining hands with the CIA to lie, to abuse their journalistic platform to spread lies knowingly, and to work with big tech to censor any information that may undermine the Democratic Party. This is who they are. Now, President Trump has called these people the enemy of the people. I would not use that phrase just because of its historical meaning, but I also would not tell people who do think that way that they're wrong. What else can you say about a group of people who work inside an industry whose function in their minds is to deceive and manipulate with lies in conjunction with the U.S. security state designed to manipulate U.S. politics domestically? What else can you say about them besides the fact that they are an extremely malignant force? That however much you distrust them, and polls show they're at their record low of distrust, however much you distrust them and despise them, it is not enough. It's not enough. This episode reveals once and for all who and what they really are. It's not just that they spread lies before the 2020 election, it's that even when their faces are rubbed and the dispositive proof that what they published was false, they just ignore it. They won't even acknowledge it, let alone retract it. That's how much contempt they have for you, for their journalistic duties, and for the truth.